All right, let's dive into one of the most famous and honestly one of the most misunderstood parts of the U.S. Constitution, the Fifth Amendment. You might wonder why the founders thought this was so important. Well, you got to remember, they knew firsthand what unchecked government power looked like, and they were determined to build a shield against it.
Of course, you have. It's everywhere, right? It's that classic line in every courtroom drama. It pops up in news headlines all the time. But what does it actually mean? And more importantly, what else is hiding behind that famous phrase?
I want you to think of the Fifth Amendment not as just a single rule, but as this multi-layered shield. It's a shield designed to protect every single citizen from the government getting too powerful, from potential overreach. It's a really fundamental set of protections.
So, let's start by peeling back those first layers of the shield. These are the protections that kick in specifically during the legal process itself, making sure there's fairness right from the get-go.
We're going to look at three absolutely crucial safeguards here: the need for a grand jury, the rule against double jeopardy, and of course that famous right against self-incrimination.
Let's start with the grand jury. Think of it as a crucial first line of defense. Before the government can even bring serious federal charges against you, it first has to convince a group of your fellow citizens that there's enough evidence to even move forward. It's a powerful check on prosecutors right from the start. Now, there is a very specific exception written right into the Constitution. This grand jury requirement, it doesn't apply to members of the armed forces during wartime or when there's a public danger. Next up is double jeopardy. And this just perfectly illustrates a core principle of fairness. The government gets one shot, just one, to make its case. If you are acquitted, meaning found not guilty, they can't just drag you back into court and try you again for the exact same crime. And the same goes if you're convicted. They can't prosecute you again for that same offense. One and done.
And here it is, the actual text, the words at the very heart of pleading the Fifth. This is the self-incrimination clause. And look at it carefully. The government cannot compel you. It can't force you to testify against yourself.
This constitutional right is the very foundation of what we all know as the right to remain silent. It's actually the legal backbone for the Miranda rights, from that landmark Supreme Court case. It makes sure that the burden of proof is always on the prosecution. They have to build their case without using a confession they squeezed out of you.
But wait, the shield doesn't just stop at the courtroom door. The Fifth Amendment also gives us broader protections that go way beyond that, extending to your fundamental rights, your life, your liberty, and your property.
This is the Due Process Clause, and it is a massive pillar of our legal system. It's a promise, really, a fundamental guarantee that the government has to act fairly and follow established rules. It can't just arbitrarily take away your most basic rights without going through the proper legal channels. The amendment also gets really specific about your physical stuff, your land, your home. What happens when the government decides it needs your land for, say, a new highway or a public park? Well, that's where the takings clause comes into play. Okay, so here we see this really fascinating balancing act. On one hand, the government does have the power, it's called eminent domain, to take private property. But, and this is so critical, that power comes with two huge strings attached. The property has to be for public use, and the government must pay just compensation, which basically means fair market value.
Okay, so we've seen all the different layers of the shield, right? Now let's put it all together. How do these big constitutional ideas actually work for you in the real world?
It really boils down to three major areas. In criminal law, it's what protects you from being forced to confess. For your civil liberties, it makes sure the government has to play by the rules. And for your property, it creates that balance between public needs and your rights as an owner. So when you step back and look at it, we've gone way beyond just pleading the Fifth. From the grand jury room all the way to your own backyard, the Fifth Amendment stands as this amazing, multifaceted shield protecting the individual against the power of the state. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've established that the Fifth Amendment is a shield. So how does knowing the full extent of its power, from due process to just compensation, how does that change the way you see the balance of power between a citizen and the government?